a Drink with live. I'm telling you right now, this show is going to be a blast. I'm putting that out there right now. Welcome. Let me see this audience. I want to see everybody. We have people from all over the country tuning in. Cheers to you all for joining us. Cheers. Everybody got their drink? Good, good, good. You guys are in for such a treat tonight. I promise you that. I have to say, of course, thank you to Think Protein Bars for making this whole experience possible. Because tonight's guest, he is a real one, you guys. I have so much admiration and love and respect for this man. So I just want to introduce you to him right now, off the top. Please welcome Karamo, my friend. Hello.
Hi, gorgeous.
Do you have your beverage?
Honey, when I saw you pick up yours earlier, I was jealous. I'm ready. This is my little beer cocktail. Shall we sip it?
You love a beer, don't you? You love a beer.
I do. I was raised with a lot of lesbians, and they would force me to drink beers.
Amazing. Well, I feel like we have so much to cover. I haven't seen you kind of in the flesh like this in real time since back before the pandemic really even started. Who would have thought we're still here smack dab? Hopefully not in the middle of it, dealing with this whole thing. How have you been doing? How are you holding up personally? How are your kids? Like, how have you been coping with everything?
Listen, it has been a roller coaster of emotions. I think, like we've seen each other's Instagrams and stuff, even though we haven't talked. And I think we're all just going through that where it's like one moment I'm like, oh, I got this. We're going to handle this. The pandemic's almost over. I'm good. And then the next day I'm like, girl, I can't deal with this mask. My kids are on my nerves. I can't watch one more TikTok. I can't do it. Like, it's just so, I'm not going to try to pretend I know how to make bread anymore. Like, it's just like a roller coaster. And the next day I'm like, okay, we're getting back to it. And I think that's okay. It's okay to acknowledge that we're going up and down, that some days we're happy, some days we're sad, some days we're afraid, because, there's still this uncertainty that happens to all of us. You just we're experiencing COVID again. And so it's like, it's scary for all of us, but then there's some days where we just feel hopeful, like today we can have a cocktail, a drink with live and, work it out.
I know. Thank God for technology, right? I mean, can you imagine if we didn't have this way to at least have some connection with everybody? And I'm glad you said that. You always keep it so real, which is one of the many reasons we love you. But like, it's, people always come to you for advice. That is your thing. You're coaching people, you're motivating people. So it makes us all feel a little bit better in our own ups and downs, because you are just like, listen, we're all human beings and nobody's got this whole thing figured out. So thank you for sharing that.
And of course. And I think anybody is a good reminder. Two reminders in that statement is that if you're with anybody who pretends like everything is okay all the time, that's the person you need to be checking in on the most. But because sometimes we forget that our strongest friends who are trying to hold everything up, listen, as particularly women, especially women and moms, you all, and I say this as a father and as a man, I bow down, because you all have so much pressure on you from just family, life, society. And I always make this effort of trying to check in, especially with my strong female friends, of saying, hey, are you okay? Because there's sort of this sort of like society sort of forces women to sort of put on this sort of like, be strong all the time. Everything's good. I'm fine. I got all of this. And so I think if any of us know anyone that's acting like everything's good all the time, check in on those strong friends and say, it's okay to like release right now. You don't have to fully break down if you don't feel comfortable. You don't have to like share everything if you don't feel comfortable, but know I'm available for you. And then secondly, if you also find somebody who you say to them, it's okay to not be okay, and they still continue to be okay, don't you start picking up those behaviors. You got to run for your own safety. You got to run for your own health, because you don't want to start saying to yourself, you know what, I'm going to pick up this behavior where I pretend like everything's okay, because it's a slippery and unhealthy slope.
I'm glad to hear you say that. That's kind of like speaking to that toxic positivity, which I am so guilty of, right? Because optimism, keep going, keep your chin up, the affirmations, like I am definitely that person. But to your point, that can be really detrimental to your health. So feel the feelings, feel the fear, feel the uncertainty, day at a time,
Yeah,
I always say, but
yeah,
it is okay. It is okay.
yeah.
Work for you. I mean, everybody, we got to get a quick Queer Eye update off the top because I know that at the beginning of the pandemic, production kind of shut down or was stalled because of
Mhm.
everything going on, but you have since picked things back up. Season 6 is on the way. How was shooting in Texas? Are you guys still shooting? Are you wrapped on that? Where are you at?
We're fully wrapped, and the only part about it that I miss is not being with those five or those four knuckleheads. That's the only part that I miss because Texas was hot, it was humid, it was mosquitoes. Listen, like we were in Austin, and Austin's a beautiful place. And I listen, I feel like I can rag on Texas a little bit just because I was born and raised there. So it's like one of those things where I'm like a native, so I'm not just bragging on a place I didn't grow up in. But Texas is very funny because this is the same thing I experienced growing up. Being black, being gay, being anything other, being a woman sometimes from some of the crew, once you step outside of the big city and you start going into the rural areas, you realize that there are individuals who still have views or beliefs that could be limiting to my growth and to my freedom in this world. And I thought being on an international show, of course, we're never going to experience any of that. And you still experience some of those like microaggressions, sometimes little things, or just seeing things, in people's front yards where you're just like, okay, I just need to back up. So, with that being said, I loved every person we helped there. Oh my gosh, we had some amazing transformations, some of the probably the best we've ever had. We keep getting better with the stories we're telling. But girl, I was ready to get out of Texas. I was like, I'm good. I was like, bye, Texas. Let me go. I'll take the coast any day. I'm good.
You
Yeah.
deal with that well. And I know you're keeping it tidy, because luckily you have an exit, right? You have an exit strategy. But
Yeah.
keeping it super real for people who maybe didn't read your memoir or hear one of my past conversations with you, there once
Mhm.
upon a time you struggled with some anger management. Like that was a part of your healing to deal with how when things do trigger you, how should you respond? So it's
Yeah.
good to hear that. I'm sure a lot of that has come into play or comes into play because at the end of the day, God, I mean, even hearing you say that just through this whole thing, through what you're saying about Texas, through the pandemic, through the differing views in our country today, through the divide of it all, whether it's politically or racially or everything that's kind of going on, sometimes I just find myself down almost because of the discord and the separation in just human beings. So what do you say to
Yes.
everybody who's watching or who's here with us tonight who is just kind of bummed out that it's like this in many ways right now, maybe not in these big cities, but it does exist? Like, where's the love?
Well, I will say the same thing I said to myself because you did bring up the anger that I used to have. And I was an angry teenager, angry 20-year-old, because I didn't know how to process the things that happened to me. And what I realized is that, I think Michael Jackson said it first, if you want to look at the man in the mirror, it's really true. And the thing that I would say to anyone who feels this sort of the dissension that we feel in this world is like, first, just show yourself love. Be honest with yourself, be vulnerable with yourself, show yourself love, hug on yourself, love you first, and then just bring that out to your small community. Because sometimes it can get very overwhelming wanting to change the world. And unfortunately, changing the world is a task that I don't even think Captain Planet could take on at this point. But I do know that if we can do little small changes with the people that are around us, like I really started focusing during the pandemic on like, little small groups that I had, like little pockets of friends. We all have those friends that we hang with, of saying like, "Hey, how do you feel about this?" And like, let's have a foursome conversation about like, this race issue or this gender issue or this sexual orientation issue or this political issue. Let's talk about it together and let's be vulnerable enough to say, I'm not going to get mad. You don't get mad, but let's go ahead and have a conversation because this is a safe environment. Is that possible on Twitter, Instagram, or in a large public discourse? Most likely not. But what I saw was this sort of growth with friends who I got to learn about in a new way got to understand where their viewpoints came from. They understood where my viewpoints came from. And we were able to help each other grow to be better people because we were in small groups. And I mean, like little things. And I was like, some of my girlfriends, we had a conversation during like the Black Lives Matter. And they were, and you know, these are women that I love that were very much like, I don't understand like all lives matter. They just didn't understand the slogan, what the slogan was based on. You know what I mean? And my initial response wanted to be like, girl, you saw that on Instagram. I'm pissed. But I was like, okay, for me, this is not something that I'm recommending for everyone. But for me, I said, you know what? I have the time and the empathy in this moment to talk to you and educate you on what I'm feeling and what my experience is. And to the point, like, where one of my little group of friends, they all have small kids are still in school. When school was going to open back, they started to say, we had a conversation about like why people don't understand Black history and what's happening in this country. And I said, well, when you look at schools, it starts there. You see slavery, you see Martin Luther King, then you see Oprah and Obama. That's what kids are taught when it comes to the experience of African Americans in this country. That's what I was taught. That's what we see, and we see it for 1 month, and then maybe those 4 photos stay up. But it doesn't talk about all the other systemic things. And when we had that conversation, they were able to say, oh my gosh, I understand why me saying all lives matter. I understand now because I wasn't educated on this. And they started to go to the schools and say, hey, can we have more photos up of Black history than just these moments that you're trying to define? Instead of it just being slavery, civil rights, and now look, everything's fine. How about we say there's nuances in between? There's things that are happening in between. It's the same thing with women's rights. If we don't know what happened because we're not told the story properly. And I think through those conversations, it gives me hope. So anybody out there, try to have those conversations with yourself and love yourself, then with your small group. And that will kind of just help you just kind of feel like, okay, things might be a little crappy, but we'll get there.
We'll get there. It is the
Yeah.
education piece. It's the education. You can't reach understanding unless you have the full scope, right? Everybody has to kind of be
Mhm.
operating from this same knowledge of what has really, really transpired. And I share that same thing with my kids because in some ways it's great that I know you have two boys in their early 20s and I have teens. And it's like, in some ways it's great because it's like they're being born into this time where it's like, oh, great, it's all good. What's all this divide about, or what's all the drama about, or, but it's like, actually, we need to take the time that what this is about. This is where it's coming from. And then they're like, oh, so that education piece is vitally important. I'm
Finally.
curious
It's
with,
funny. Can I just say one more thing? Because I've been bringing up a
yeah.
lot when I was talking about the race thing. I keep bringing up these women, like the comparison of women's rights. It's because it's a conversation I just had with my son. My son and I just 2 weeks ago, Jason, had a whole conversation because he was like, I get it, but I don't understand like why are like women have equal jobs. Like I lose out jobs to women. And I was like, "Ooh, son, let's, ooh, son, let's take it back. Like, let me help you really quickly to understand like systemically what has happened to women, just as we talked about with African Americans and like these things." And it took me like literally, I'm talking about last week, where I was having a real deep conversations about like why there's a pay gap, why are these issues, and like you said, as parents, we think like, oh, it's great that you're born in this time where you have access to so much education, to so much, but even with all of that, these kids are still stupid. And so we have to like take the we still have to take the patience and educate them. You know what I mean? And, I mean, I'm learning too, but I'm like these babies. They don't know better.
You said what I wanted to say, but you said
Okay.
it so much better. You're not wrong. You are not wrong. But that brings me to a question I wanted to ask you about being a dad,
Okay.
because the world thinks of you now, you've made a living out of dispensing advice, right? And by the way, brilliant, profound wisdom that we can all learn from. And whether it's on the show or your podcast or your book or your Instagram, you're always like, you were giving this beautiful advice to people. Nobody knows better than me that at home things can be different. And you just alluded to that on social issues, like what those conversations are like. But what would you
Mhm.
say is the hardest part for you being a dad? Because even you must have, turbulence at home. Like, what for you personally do you find to be the most challenging part of parenting?
right now is trying to release my expectations of what I thought my sons should be or would be doing right now and allowing them to live their life. Because I see them making choices and I'm like, I know I taught you better than that. I know I spent all of seventh grade giving you this knowledge. Like this was lesson of that year. And then I see them as 20 years old, 20, well, my youngest is 21 now, the oldest 24. And I'm like, what did I just miss? And I'm like, or when I say like, what are you doing with your career or this choice or whatever? And they're great kids. They don't give me any problems. They're doing good. They're finding their own path. But it's like I'm managing the expectations I had in my mind and sort of grieving a lot of what I wanted. And I think that's the biggest challenge for me right now because I do give them advice and I realize that, the world, it's funny. I'll have a line of people come and get my advice. Their lives will change. And I'm not saying that arrogantly or something. It would be like, we work together to figure out what their solution is. I come home and I tell my kids something. They're like, okay. You know what I mean? I'm like, you do know I get paid for this. You do know, like, this is what I do. You might want to listen to me. And there's this whole thing where it's like, it's very hard to watch someone you love make choices that you don't believe is going to be beneficial to their life. And I'm sure you know this, Catt, because you have your kids are teens now. And so now they're in that space where they're making their own decision. They're making their own lives. They're dating who they want to date. They're deciding what they want to do with their careers. And because we've been through it, we're like, no, don't date that one. I know where this goes. I know where that goes. Or I'm like, oh no, that group you think you're like starting a business with, that's not going anywhere. Or that gap year you want to take off, I know what's going to happen. And it's just like having those conversations with myself so that I can still allow my kids to be their own selves without pressuring them to sort of want to be what I was expecting them to be.
It's a lot of biting your own lip, right? It's just kind of like sometimes you just have to like say nothing, even though the natural instinct is to teach and to guide and to serve them. But yeah, they have to fail. Like, that's where a lot of those lessons are, is learning that for themselves. So I totally get that. We love them no matter what.
No matter what, we love them. But I always tell them, I'm like, listen, you don't want to take my advice. I'm staying quiet on certain things. I'm like, just remember one thing. Failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of it. So I'm like, if you can just continue to hold your self-esteem and know that if you fail, doesn't mean that you're not going to be successful or that you're not successful. Just know that that is the process of you becoming even more successful. And that's literally been sort of the guidance I've been giving them a lot now. When I see them doing something, I'm like, listen, if something happens, I'm here for you. And just remember, failure is not the opposite of success. It's part of it. And they're like, okay, I got it. And that's my hope of just like, please don't let their self-esteem be affected by fill in the blank, because I know for a fact this shit ain't gonna work out.
I love your confidence. I wish I had that much confidence. I'm a little softer with my kids because, I don't know. I need a little Karamo in me because I'd probably be more effective. I need to be harder on their ass is what I need to be.
You are an effective mother. I've seen your children. You are that balance of stern and love that I actually admire. So I just want to give you some praise on that. You actually are.
Well, thank you. You. I guess I have the mothering thing down, but also keeping it real. Relationships, romantic ones, aren't particularly my strength. I know a lot of people can relate to that. And your former fiance is no longer. You did not make it to the altar. I understand that. I mean, and boy, I went through a breakup during the pandemic too. It's like the worst time to go through that. How have you reckoned? I mean, it's like this too on top of everything else. How are you doing now? Something tells me you've worked through that. You're in a good place. Or something tells me you're in a good place because I saw you in the arms of some other dude on Instagram. So it looks like you're doing okay.
My little Latino boyfriend. Yo, okay. He's fine.
Do we want to bring Carlos into the conversation?
Listen, Carlos can come in the conversation. He's in the other room. Since I've been with Carlos, yo aprendo español. Yo practicaba mi maestra, mi novio, todos los días. Mi español es bueno.
Tu amor es muy guapo también.
Gracias. Gracias. too
Mhm.
hermosa. But
Mhm.
yeah, the breakup with my ex. Luckily, he and I are still friends. We were together for 9 years. We were planning our wedding, and our wedding was our engagement got drawn out for 2 years. And the reason, like, I would tell people, like, oh, we're planning, we're doing all these things, and the reason that was because he didn't want me to tell that we were like going through therapy, because there was a lot of things that I was just like, before I walk down this aisle, we have to figure out. We have to figure out, like, are we in line for the next 40 years? You know, like, are we in line with like our values of like how we're going to raise our family, our grandkids if we have them, how we're going to align with like what do we want to do with our finances, like even more, because now we're fully joining together. You know, like there's a marriage now. Are we in line with how we want to travel? Are we in line with sex? You know what I mean? Which is a topic after you've been together for such a long time of like, well, are we thinking about trying something new? Are we thinking about like maybe should we go to like a like what comes next? Because you have to continuously do the work in these relationships. And we were doing that work, and I kept feeling so fraud. And I can say it now and talk about it honestly. And you're the first person I've honestly talked about it with, is because every time I do an interview, he'd be like, remember, do not say that our engagement is going on because of our work. And I was like, okay, you know, I'm an open book, so I hate not being able just to share. But I was like, I respect him. But in the therapy, it just became abundantly clear to me that we weren't aligned. And I watched a relationship with my parents that was where it was like, well, we're gonna stay just to because we've already put in this time. You know, like we've already done it. So you're not going nowhere and I'm not going anywhere. You know, I might not be happy, you're not going to be happy, but we're not going anywhere. And there was abuse in my parents' relationship, and they still were staying together. You know, my mother was being beaten up by my father and stuff. And I couldn't imagine in my mind, like, for myself staying in a relationship, even though there was no emotional or physical abuse, where I was like, I'm unhappy, but I'm gonna stay. I was like, why am I settling? And there was this sort of question I kept asking myself morning after morning after morning. And especially once the pandemic hit, I said to myself, is this what I deserve? And I kept thinking about this when I'm 41, is this what I deserve? Do I deserve like not having the adventures I want? Do I deserve not having the sex I want? Do I deserve not having fill in the blank? And the more I kept saying, is this what I deserve? I found the courage to say, no, this is not what I deserve. And once I was finally able to admit that to myself, which was probably like May, I got scared and I reproposed because I was like, what are you doing? Don't do this. Don't do this. You're about to wreck everything. You're just sabotaging your own life. And I got scared. And I'm acknowledging this because there's probably someone listening who's in that relationship and they're finding the courage. And then once they're about to pull the trigger, they get nervous and they go back. And the minute I re-pulled the trigger, I said to myself, I ran to the bathroom and I was like, you failed yourself because you know what you deserve and you're not giving it to yourself. And then I went on like a month journey of saying, why am I afraid to get what I deserve? And I realized the answer to that for me was I wasn't sure if it was real. What I kept saying I deserved, I wasn't sure if it was real because I didn't have any examples of it. And so I kept saying, well, this is good enough. So I don't know if what I deserve is real. So just stay with what I have. And I was like, I have to believe it's real because even if someone else can't give it to me, I believe that I can give it to myself. And the minute I started to believe that is when I said, I'm sorry, but I gotta break this up. And it was hard for that month because, you know, we're in a pandemic, we didn't have work to go to. So we just had to sit there. But because I was honest with myself and then honest with him, we remained friends. But I just really had to, I want to make sure I was being honest because I want to make sure anybody out here know, like, it's not that simple where it's just like, oh, I know what I deserve. And like, great, I'm pulling the trigger. It's like, sometimes you're like, no, 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 I get scared. And I got scared, but then I realized I can give what I deserve to myself. And if someone else out there can't. And that was sort of my guidance to say, I can do this. And now with Carlos, every time I'm with him, if there's something I say, you know what? I can give myself this, and that's okay for me. And if we can build this together, that's great. But until I know for a fact that we can build all these things that I deserve, that I'm giving to myself, then we're just gonna like have fun. And we're not going to put the pressure on it until I know we can give each other what we deserve. And that's sort of the space I'm in now. Took me to 40 to figure that out, but I figured it out. Jesus, I figured it out.
Oh my gosh, I have so much to to say to everything you just said. Number one, yes, you deserve it, and you have that fun. And yes, something about being in the 40s. I'm right there with you. I'm a little dry compared to you, but I'm keeping my heart open because I deserve it. Everyone has to find that for themselves. And man, did that hit me when you said, I never saw it modeled, or I never saw the example of what is possible in love. And, man, this is why we're friends, because I can relate to that so much too. You can fantasize, but then you get stuck because, you almost get super cynical that it doesn't exist. And so it's this constant web. And look at you. You were, which is something many of us do. We were lying to ourselves. And then that self-betrayal, that's worse than anything, because then you're living this lie, and that's the worst of all, because then your self-worth plummets, and then you don't think you deserve anything. Am I right?
Yes, preach it.
You got me hot. Yeah. You got me hot.
This okay. But this is why I love talking to you, because we know it. We've been through it, and we experience it. And it's like, I think that the relationship conversations don't get as candid as we're getting right now. And because people want to give someone else hope. And I do believe in hope, but I also believe in let's be real. Especially if you're dating on because I joined Tinder and everyone told me not to. But the reason I joined Tinder is because, and this is a little quick funny story, and I'm not name dropping or anything. Laverne Cox was like, I found someone on Tinder. You can find it on Tinder. And I was like, well, people are not going to think it's me because I'm on television or whatever. She was like, it doesn't matter. That means you weed those people out. And I was on Tinder swiping. I was on a date every single day while I was in Austin. Let me be very clear, because I've already been vaxxed, but we were social distancing dates. So my assistant was helping me do picnics and things where we could be together but apart. And I went on at least 40 dates with 40 guys in a matter of the time. I'm not joking, because I was that serious about, now that I knew what I deserved, because I already did the work on myself, I was like, let me go out there and find someone. And it's like, when I brought this up to say, these are the kind of conversations about really what it's like today of dating, and how to go. You just said you broke up with yours, and you're in that process. We know what it's like in these trenches. We know what it's like.
Trenches.
But we are working through it.
Yeah, but you put yourself out there, and I'm proud of you, because you said, okay, I'm going to take this by the reins, whether it's Tinder or whatever it is. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to show up for myself, because if you don't put yourself out there, then, how in the heck is the universe going to deliver you what you need? Okay, now just quick question, because we have so many questions from our awesome audience, and I want to get to those in 1 second. But now I'm just curious, did you meet Carlos on Tinder?
Let me tell you something. The day I deleted Tinder, I went to Instagram and was looking at beauty things, I like to watch makeup and hair things because they relax me, even though I'm bald. And he's a beauty photographer. So he shoots the makeup for Kylie, cosmetics, all these big brands. And I saw his and was like, these are some beautiful shots. And I accidentally clicked a photo. He saw it and said, thank you for liking my work. And that's how we met. So I was like, I wasted all my time with all these old whack Tinder dates and went to go look at a profile that had no photos of his ass, only makeup photos. And that's how I found my man.
So you didn't even know how fine he was. You just knew that he was talented.
Did not know, and did not know for about 3 days, because it took me about 3 days to say, we're chatting casually through DMs, and you could be a weirdo or could be whatever. And I was like, can we do this might sound weird, a FaceTime through Instagram? And that FaceTime popped up, baby. And I was like, okay. I was like, hi. I wasn't cute for them. But yeah.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. I'm so happy for you. Okay, let's get to some questions for you, Karamo. First up is Lauren. Lauren's gonna come here to the stage to talk to you, and I just want to remind Lauren to turn her mute button off so Karamo can hear your question. Go right ahead.
Hey, Lauren.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
I can.
Great. Okay. So I know from watching you on Queer Eye and just your general life, your faith is a very important aspect of your life. As being a queer person myself, but also someone that was raised in a religious household, I kind of really struggle with this intersection of, religion and also my queerness. So how, I guess, do you approach this in your relationship with your identity and also with your faith? I just am interested in kind of your relationship with these
Yeah.
things.
Great question, first of all. Thank you for opening up and sharing. I like to meet anybody who's part of the queer family. But for me, it was about reconciling my relationships with people versus my relationship with a religion. And so I realized that my relationship with the organized religion was never healthy. And even to this day, I still haven't found an organized religion that was healthy for me. But I did realize that my relationship with people who are spiritual, who are loving, is what I'm clinging to more. I'm not a theologian or anything like that, but early on, because I had to fight against so many people who would tell me and use the Bible to hurt me, I did study it enough to know the text and be able to say, like, Sodom and Gomorrah, like one of those things we all hear, is actually not about homosexuality at all. It's about pedophilia. So don't use this against me. And I had to get all these things so I could fight against it. And I realized, reading the text, I was like, well, none of this text is about fighting. It's all about love. So if I'm using my energy to fight this organized religion, then it's not what I need to be a part of. And I think it's the same thing that we should just do in our personal lives, of understanding that it's okay to set boundaries with people, institutions that you have in your life, to say, if you don't serve me with love, then it's okay for me to take a step away from you. I'm talking about, this is like with family members. I'm good with being like, hey, auntie, you know what? You're really toxic. You're really negative. I'm okay with stepping away from you. And it was the same thing with that. So now I do call myself religious, but in a spiritual way, where I connect with people and I use love as the guiding practice for me. And so I just say to you, continue to set those boundaries and say, if you're trying to hurt me, then you're not for me. But always keep your heart open to finding the love that you need and the upliftment, whether it's in religion or within just spirituality or just in connection with people, because we all do need that connection at some point.
That's so insightful. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Love that. That was such a heartfelt and thoughtful response, Karamo. That was awesome and a great question, Lauren. We have really only one more question, because we, of course, are going over on our time. So I want to go to Georgie next. Georgie has a question for you, Karamo, and take it away.
Hi, Karamo.
Hey, Georgie.
Michael, Queer, you are so amazing at identifying what people need to change in their own lives. What's a good way for us to kind of look inward and identify what we need to change in our lives?
Oh, well, there's something that I say to myself, like, I'm good on a good mantra that I use, because I feel like I live my personal life in mantras. But one of the things that I always say to myself is, comparison is the thief of joy. And it allows me to take a look at, what am I looking at on the outward that I'm so obsessed with or think that I must have, that's keeping me from looking on the inside of what I really need. And I talked about earlier, if you were on, I was talking about, my relationship and my engagement that broke off. I was so busy talking about, like, the love we had and showing, like, we're happy and look, we have the kids and all the things that we all do, the Instagram life we want to present, that I realized that comparing myself to this version was not allowing me to see what I was really missing. And so I would just tell you, just to, like, look at the things that you're comparing your life to and realize that it's stealing your joy, the things that you're telling yourself you must get, you must have. Tell yourself that actually what I really need right now is just to sit with myself and really figure out what makes me happy, what makes me smile. Like, when was the last time you thought about what just really makes you really happy? When was the last time?
I don't know. That's the thing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. And the thing is you're not alone, girlfriend. Like, seriously, that's something that I literally had to say to myself. I don't sit a lot and say what makes me happy. I'm really good at figuring out what makes the person I'm dating happy. I'm really good at, like, being there for my friends and making sure they're happy. But I don't take enough time to just wake up and say, what's going to make me happy today? And I just would encourage you, because I see the light shining from you, just to say, today, I'm going to start taking a little bit more time to focus on what makes me happy, because that's going to help you to really slowly but confidently start to figure out what's good for you and what's on the inside that you need to work on and grow through.
That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Go through and glow through. This is all such wonderful, wonderful advice and so many tips. I'm going to ask one last question of you, and can be kind of a quickie rapid fire, because I'm just thinking,
Yes.
you have all this wonderful wisdom that you are so kind to share with everyone. So we all look to you for that wisdom. Who is one person or one author or one motivator or someone that you have discovered that you are obsessed with, that you look to for your own growth?
Okay, I'm gonna tell you this, and this is really not like, I'm not pandering. This is my God honest truth, because I'm the baby. I have four older sisters raised by my mom. I don't look just to one person. I constantly look to women. I tell people all the time that the closest thing we have on this earth to God is women. And like my sex, not to be a traitor to my gender, we screwed it up. And sometimes I'm just like, can we just give up the reins and like just really realize who should be in control and running every single thing? And so like I find strength, vulnerability, love from so many different women in my life. I'm talking about like literally, and this is God honest truth. I was talking to my best friend today who's dating somebody, and they shouldn't be dating. I was giving advice. And I said, I was like, in the great words of philosopher Cardi B, broke boys don't deserve no And I was like, because you over here about to have sex with him, and he does not check one thing off of your list of like financial stability, honesty about his credit, honesty about where he lives. I was like, so these are the things that matter to you, yet you are over here about to give up the goods for somebody who don't even check off your list. I was like, girl, don't do it. And so I say that to say, even like Cardi B, like there's so many people, like from politicians to authors, these empowering women that I just look to, and I'm like, thank you for having the strength to be stronger than me and vulnerable than me, and be happy and be sad and do everything that sometimes I feel limited in. And I learned from them. So that's who I know it wasn't rapid fire, but that's who I look to as women. I look to you.
Well, I speak on behalf of all women and say thank you so much. We love you. And guys, I mean, you're phenomenal. Go check out Karamo's Instagram. Go check out his skincare line, Mantle. Go listen to his podcast. There's a lot of Karamo to go around. What would we do without you? And thank you for taking the time. You were so inspiring. I've missed you. So much love. Thank you.
I love you. Cheers. I've had so much fun on A Drink with Live. Catt, this is amazing.
Woo! Cheers, Karamo. Cheers, everybody, to our amazing audience for taking the time out tonight to be with us. And of course, thank you to Think Protein Bars, because they brought us all together. They make this possible. And you can watch this interview again at adrinkwith.com. Cheers. Bye.